Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Need Some Introduction. I'm your host, Victor, and on this podcast, we're normally going week to week with a new show, watching it and introducing you all to something new to watch, along with some recommendations that tie into our current watch. Today's episode, primarily, we're going to be discussing the Stephen King adaptation, Welcome to Derry, and maybe just some generally talking about, obviously, what we thought of this first episode, but other adaptations of Stephen King's other works as well. But also, we will be discussing a very popular show, very popular film, I should say, that premiered on Netflix just this week, the new Catherine Bigelow film, A House Full of Dynamite? A House of Dynamite? What was the title here, Darren?
A House of Dynamite, I think it was called.
They have three different, they say it three different times. There's a title card within and each time it's slightly different. So I couldn't remember the actual official title, A House of Dynamite. On these episodes, I am joined by Darren.
How are you there, Victor? Yeah, just following on from our spooky season horror Stephen King episode from last week. I caught up on The Dead Zone from David Cronenberg and very much enjoyed it. So thanks for that recommendation.
Terrific. Yeah, we had a bunch of recommendations last week. That was a blind spot for Darren. And we might mention some other Stephen King adaptations as well in this very episode. And possibly, I'll edit this out if we don't get around to it, but also I did have some people have been reaching out like, oh, I'm not really into horror. I'm a scaredy cat. So I did put together a list of possible films that the scaredy cats might want to watch on Halloween. That's not too scary for the scaredy cats. And I did share the list with Darren, and maybe Darren has some. I'm curious to see if you've seen those films that I mentioned, but also if you have any others that you want to shout out as well. Of course, everybody's looking for something scary to watch this week. And of course, we have the terrifying Welcome to Derry series. Am I being sarcastic? You'll have to wait for the review. All right, let's kick things off with, I think we can probably talk about this film without getting to spoilers, although we may have a spoiler section. Maybe we'll save it for the end of the episode if there is one, only because this movie, A House of Dynamite, played at the film festivals and got some very strong reviews. And now the audience reaction has been negative not on the total film. By the way, Darren, you mentioned, is this getting review bombed? Because you're seeing some very disparate types of reviews. I did check some of the review aggregators afterwards, and Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb both are websites that normally get review bombed. And I have to say that the average rating among viewers on both of those platforms was pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. So it makes me feel like most people are enjoying the film. But with a caveat, I think most people are disappointed with the ending. We will not give away the ending here. But I was curious, before we get into any kind of plot breakdown or anything like that, Darren, what did you think of this film?
Okay, so I saw the reviews coming out of the film festivals over the last couple of months, and they were almost universally 5 stars. So I was very interested in checking out this movie. I'm a massive fan of Catherine Bigelow, mainly based on Point Break, which I think is a stone cold classic, but also other films of hers like The Hurt Locker, Zero Dark 30, I really enjoyed, and also Strange Days, which I feel like gets forgotten. Is that a word? Forgotten and that's a real cool end of the 90s type movie that is quite prescient in things that have happened recently. But yes, A House of Dynamite, I think it's going to be difficult to talk about without spoiling, but I will try. I didn't know about the structure. The structure of the film really informs the kind of review that you do. So it's told in 3 separate stories which follow the same incident, which I cottoned on to very early on in the second, like maybe halfway through the film, in the second installment of this story. I was very thrilled throughout most of this film, to be honest. I was extremely thrilled, and especially the first segment, which shows
is very
the whole
strong. I totally
situation.
Agree. I think we could give just to set the table there a little bit, Darren. I think we could set I think it's in the trailer itself on the Netflix show, but just like to set the context a little bit to make the conversation a little bit easier. Like you mentioned, it is like a triptych. I think it's 3 sections where you are seeing the same rewinding of time. So we're seeing the same 18 minutes, I think they've said in the notes, although it obviously stretches out for half an hour, but we're seeing so many people's perspectives. I guess it is 18 minutes, but it's unpacked to a larger amount, like maybe like 35 or 40 minutes each section. The first section, absolutely the strongest one, really on edge. A nuclear missile. This is like in moments as the episode, the film actually opens, within a minute or so, that a nuclear weapon has been fired at the United States. It's a single nuclear weapon, and the satellite has missed its point of origin. So they don't know who sent this out, who could it be. And it is just a very realistic, I think, unpacking of like, what is the decision making at that moment? Like, what are you going to do when you don't know? How do you retaliate? How do you take precautions? How do you warn people given you have such a small amount of time? And it literally is this missile on a trajectory, getting more and more specific as to where it might land. And it's just a decision making in this operations center. And then, like you mentioned, Darren, then we rewind and we see the same events from other people's POVs. And that's the whole structure of the film. So I think that's enough. We won't go into anything beyond that plot wise, but continue with any other conversation you want to bring up.
Yeah, no, I know how you like to talk about films that are like proficiency porn.
Yeah.
So this shows some of that, but it also shows massive failings across the board. From the tiny little bit, like a guy there's a screen that's not working, and there's a guy trying to fix the screen, and he shouldn't be there at all when this thing is going on. And people that have loved ones that think they want to contact their loved ones because they might want to warn them of what's happening, all the way along to someone muting their audio when they shouldn't be muting, or the guy that's sick. So his next in command has to step up and make these huge decisions and talk to the president to try to inform him what's going on. And the fact, I think I read this morning, that the fact that whoever these guys are that at the top level, they train for this situation 400 times a year, whereas the president never trains for this operation. The president's handed this menu of things, and he has to make a decision of what to do to possibly incur the destruction of the whole world. I thought it was a fascinating film. I probably wouldn't go 5 stars. I probably wouldn't go 1 star either, because I was a bit shocked that people were really off this film. But I reckon it was a middling to really good film, and I quite enjoyed it. But there's an ending that is possibly unsatisfactory to a lot of people.
Yeah, and I completely agree with all of that. I did think that as it kept reiterating the same timeline, it became a little repetitive, and I needed some kind of payoff. And then the question remains as to how much of a payoff you get there at the end. And once again, I don't want to spoil it, but I would say that most people, and I feel the same way, I very much appreciated so much of the film. I thought the suspense was really great. It was very authentic feeling. It's probably very well researched. I don't know if this is exactly how it would play out, but there's a documentary, if anyone's curious. I can't remember the name of it, but I'll put it in the show notes when I do remember, that there's a documentary that shows these actual war games where they get all these, intellectuals and military leaders, and they're like cordoned off in this bunker, and they play out these scenarios, these end of world apocalyptic scenarios, just to have some practice at making these type of decisions. And it's probably comes out of that research that this very movie comes out of there. And if there's anything that's being said here, because it's very presentational, by the way, there's no political points being scored here. It is very much just like these 18 minutes and how proficient these people have to be. And I would say that if there's anything political that's being said here, it's that we all at the end of this movie wipe our brows and go, phew, thank goodness that the most rational, even-headed, and well thought out people are in positions of power when something like this happens. And if you don't catch the irony there, people, I don't know what to tell you. But I do think it does chill you to the bone when you do think about these things in watching this movie.
Yeah, fascinating. I think, all the stories in it tell slightly different perspectives, but I was quite interested in all of them, even though they get a little less thrilling over time because of what's going to happen. But the one with the president at the end, where the president's almost a celebrity, and he needs to do so many public performances and appearances, whereas when he's actually presented with a life or death situation, it's like he's almost not trained at all to do this job. Right. It reminded me of, I couldn't stop thinking, what was that show that we covered? Paradise. Yeah. So the penultimate episode of Paradise shows a similar type of end of the world situation and how people deal with it, either excellently or terribly. So I thought that was interesting to see it in that kind of context as well.
Yeah, I think we can leave it there. I would recommend it as well. I would say that I dinged it an entire star. By the way, I was very thrilled. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time watching it. And then I dinged it an entire star because of the ending. But I still give it a thumbs up. But I do want to just put that out there for folks that some people, an unsatisfying ending is a once. I think that's why you're seeing the very divisive reaction. People probably do feel like, well, that was a 4-star movie until the end. But some people like I know many films, by the way, that are considered 5-star classics that I think are messy films, but have a strong ending. And people love those endings. If you nail the ending, you get a really good score. It's like the gymnast. If you stick the landing, you get a really high score. Doesn't matter how messy you looked in the air, you stick the landing. That's all that matters. Not everybody grades that way, but I do think that is the case, that sometimes an unsatisfying ending will knock you down. I will just leave it at the film wants you to define your own ending there, and without going into any details. And like I said, if that's not going to be satisfying for you, then take that with a grain of salt. But I think until then, it's very professionally made. I have to say that the one thing I would say that's a very negative here is that this is 8 years now since Catherine Bigelow's made a movie when she made Detroit, which is not great, but it has an interesting film for sure. Very well made also. But for her to go 8 years to make this, I mean, like, I feel like this could have been shot in like 2 or 3 weeks. I don't understand. Like, you would think after 8 years that there would be a really big project coming from her. And so I'd say that in anticipation, it feels a little slight for her. But maybe she's dipping her toes back in, and now she's got the big project coming. Maybe this is just like getting that Netflix relationship going so that she can make something bigger. I do hope we don't have to wait another 8 years for another movie that really is half a movie, 3/4 of a movie. So we'll see. Oh,
Yeah,
one more
that's
thing.
interesting.
One thing I want to ask you, Darren, is speaking of Bigelow, and of course we have Halloween coming up. Have you ever seen Near Dark?
It's on my list. It's another one on my list. I've never seen it. No.
There we go. Another Halloween blind spot. Here's more homework for you. But it is a Western with this family of vampires out in the West with Bill Paxton. This is produced by James Cameron when they were together still, when Bigelow and Cameron were together. So we have Bill Paxton in there because Paxton was like in anything related to James Cameron back in the day. And it's a great one, like a vampire Western. A lot of fun.
That's interesting. She's been making movies for numerous decades. So, yeah, I must say that I do concur with you that it's a little bit disappointing that this movie is mainly a streaming title.
Yeah.
And as you said, could have been shot very quickly, apart from the knowledge needed to write the script.
And by the way, everybody, like you said, all the performances are very strong. And a lot of people are recognizable here, mostly as character actors. Idris Elba as the president, obviously a very big name, but relatively small role, to be honest, even though we see him pop up throughout the earlier versions of the story as well. But I thought that Rebecca Ferguson is so great in the first section. So I think like part of the reason that first section works so well is it's palpable, the stress that she's under there. It's really great.
Yeah, she's great. I actually didn't know Idris Elba was in the film, and I was trying to work out his voice because you see the president's, well, you hear his voice, but you don't actually see him on camera because he doesn't have a camera on his phone during his meetings with them. So it was a fun surprise to see Idris Elba in the last section.
With a pretty weak, I mean, he's done some really good American accents. That's a pretty bad accent there. I mean, he slipped into London that accent a few times there in his performance. So.
I thought so too. There was a lot of international stars in there playing Americans at the top.
It's also fun to see. I gotta pull up the cast list here to remember the names. Oh, seeing Tracy Letts. For anybody who doesn't know, Tracy Letts is the writer of August, Osage County. Is that the name of that? He won the Pulitzer Prize for that. But he's also wrote Bug, the play.
Yeah, he was excellent in it. I thought he played a really good role. Is he married to the lady from The White Lotus?
Yes, Carrie Coon.
Yep.
Oh, but he also wrote Killer Joe. That's the other movie I was trying to remember. But so was a writer primarily, stage writer, and still his plays still get produced. But now is primarily transitioned to being an actor. But I just think it's very funny that when you need the kind of the douchey white guy who's like we see him in The Lowdown and in this movie at the exact same time.
And there's a couple of nods to Doctor Strangelove in this film as well.
Very good shout out. Yes, there definitely are. This is like a straight faced Doctor Strangelove. So another recommendation if anyone hasn't seen that in a while. All right, maybe we'll spend a couple minutes in the spoiler section at the end. We'll circle around to I want to get your feel for the end of the film. And if anybody has do check the show notes this so you can jump around to the different sections. But I'll definitely have a timestamp there when we get to the spoilers, which we'll get to once we cover some of these other topics. Okay, next up, Darren, Welcome to Derry. So it's Halloween, and HBO makes some pretty prestigious adaptations. They made The Outsider recently, another Stephen King adaptation just a few years back. Very successful. And of course, Warner Brothers, which owns HBO, has also made the hugely financially successful It films. And so we get this film's been in this series has been in production for like 2 years because of the shutdowns from the writer's strike. Honestly, seeing this episode, I think they might have also done some changing. They tried to correct some things in the script because I think this pilot episode has probably been tampered with, has been reshot. There's some questions I have there on some of the things we saw there. But I don't know how else to say this. I thought this was an absolute disaster of an episode of TV.
Wow, tell us what you really think.
I don't want to be completely poisoned the well here, but I want to be upfront about that. But so, I mean, I have reasons for, and I think I just wasn't vibing with what I was seeing on screen at all. And we can get into details on that. But I mean, I know you're a bigger fan of, like, for example, the first of the more recent, the Machetes, the same couple that is producing this show and I think directed this episode, who also made the very popular films we talked about a minute ago. What'd you think of this in general?
Okay, my reaction was not as strong as yours. In fact, it was quite positive, I'm going to say. It certainly wasn't overwhelmingly positive, but I'm on board with it and I'm trying to keep an open mind. I thought the structure of it was, I don't know how. So we're spoiling this, or are we going through
I think we
this?
could spoil this episode of the show because, I mean, we'll just, obviously we've only seen one episode. So, I mean, but I think you could spoil this episode, I would presume, at this point, if you are, I honestly think, this is part of the reason I wanted to have this conversation, that I was looking at the audience reaction, and on those same review aggregators I was talking about before, the reaction from audiences, there are definitely people who are like, this is garbage, right? But the vast majority of the people really were very enthused about this because I think there is like a self-selecting audience for this kind of product. So that is to say that I think the people right now who are still interested in what we're about to say have probably already seen this. They were probably looking forward to it. So.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Yes, I was looking forward to it. And I thought so it's kind of got a bit of a storybook type look to it. So there's, I mean, we've talked in the past about how our distaste for CG. There's a lot of CG backgrounds in this. It kind of looks like it's a pastiche of like 50s, 60s type television, I think, or that kind of style. I thought it had a fantastic section up front with the car scene, the birth of the demon, which I didn't find scary at all. And none of it I found scary. I thought it was funny. I thought the scary bits were actually quite funny. And the bit at the end, which was quite shocking, really, because they set up these kids. I mean, it is all about the losers club, right? And it's about the kids, and you really feel these outcasts, and they band together and they fight this thing. So they assemble these outcasts together, and you're like, okay, the performances are a little bit uneven with these kids.
Definitely.
Some of them I was going with. Some of them I was like, ooh, I hope he gets better during the series. But then by the end, the Losers Club is decimated.
It's all eaten by the baby demon.
Eaten, destroyed, pulled apart. Who knows? I do like how the baby demon is a twin, right? So he's got another bit hanging off him. Did you notice that?
I hadn't looked that closely, but I'll take your word for it.
And I did enjoy when he's flying around the car and she's holding on by the umbilical cord. Yeah. Quite graphic seeing the birth scene as well. I'm all for it. I mean, yes, uneven. Yes, some of the acting's a bit dodge, but I'm trying not to be negative because I know that you're going to be extremely negative. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode. Even though the lead girl, who I guess is going to be the lead of the series, is also not particularly strong for me.
I agree.
Yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm definitely going to watch the next one. Yeah, so tell us why you think it was a disaster.
So a couple of things I want to mention. First of all, I'm glad that you enjoyed it and were more into it, because I did want to have the show as part of our coverage, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be popular. Even if it is divisive, maybe even more popular if it is. So, and there's a lot of overlap, like I had thought about. For example, in a couple of weeks on Netflix, Frankenstein, the Del Toro Frankenstein, is going to premiere. It's currently in theaters. So I'm like, well, there you go. We got another horror movie we could talk about, another adaptation, of course. The following week, Running Man is in theaters, another Stephen King adaptation. A week after that, we get Stranger Things, the final season of Stranger Things, or the first batch of episodes. And of course, Stranger Things is basically inspired by It, right? There's like a direct correlation between the two. So I'm like, there's so much overlap. Even if I'm not 100% on board with the show, then we'll continue to cover it. Oh, and by the way, of course, the Chair Company continues. We'll be watching that on Sunday night, so we can incorporate these other things we're watching on HBO as well. So I'm like, it's pretty easy to cover it. There's other things that will be premiering at the same time that we can use to build the conversation around. And if you had as negative opinion, but if you had as negative opinion as I had, I would have just pulled the plug on this and been like, well, I don't want to just come on and trash the show every week. Like, what's the point, right? And it could get better, by the way, right? But I had little confidence based on that first episode. And I think that's what really matters. You're touching on it. Like, the car scene worked for you. I thought the car scene was terrible, and it did set the tone for the episode. But for me, it's just that I don't know, maybe it's just my taste, but it's like before you get to a scene like that, I mean, you gotta give me a little peck on the cheek, take me out for dinner, maybe a little over the clothes stuff before we get to that. I'm like, oh, we're just jumping in here like right away. Like, it was a little crazy. And like you said, it's not like it was crazy and it's somehow like terrifying. I thought it was silly and ridiculous. And it does make me think again. I had this thought when I was watching The Black Phone, with the conversation we just had last week. I'm like, who's the audience for this? Because is this scary to like adults? And once again, maybe it's not for me, right? So maybe like just accepting the fact that maybe this is not geared for me. But I would say in general, and we'll talk about some other Stephen King adaptations in this very conversation. But I think in general, I think that this is indicative of what I think is wrong with Stephen King adaptations. And again, this is all a matter of taste and probably generational. I shouldn't be watching these things at all. But what it comes down to is that when I read the book It, the monsters in It are silly, right? It's what kids are afraid of. And it's taking that silliness and then making it scary. And I think that's very hard to do in a movie. I think that's why most Stephen King novels are hard to adapt and really not very successfully adapted, because it's hard to make that pivot from one thing to the other. And I think the mistake that's been made, and probably because it's been popularized with the success of the movie It, is that now it's about taking what's on the page and putting it on the screen. And I think about, for example, in It Chapter 2, which I just saw very recently for the first time, like when the Paul Bunyan statue is attacking with an axe, and it's like this drawn out sequence. And I'm like, that is only scary in the book from a child's perspective. Seeing that on screen is never not going to be absolutely silly, right? And the fact that it's almost like we want to put the silly thing on the screen now seems to be like a mistake in adaptations, is my general opinion, or at least that's my taste profile. And yeah, so that's so specifically with that opening scene, it just hit the wrong tone for me. And then I'm like, okay, like the pacifiers floating down the river or whatever the hell's going on with that thing. And like, I don't even understand how that is like what they think they're set. Like, this is the introductory sequence for the whole entire series. I don't know. Had a lot of questions on that. And then I'm like, okay, but maybe things will reset. And then, like you mentioned, you see these kids, you think you're going to get the same thing you've seen before. They're creating this losers club again. They're even seeing like their backstory, like that one boy's like has a Jewish family, probably also outsiders in this. It's the 1960s, just to set that as context. It's 1962, 27 years before the early section of It Chapter 1, basically, because this demon comes back every 27 years. And yeah, the kids weren't working for me. The chemistry wasn't working for me. And then towards the end of the episode, a couple of the kids, some of the scenes worked for me. And then they have this rug pull of killing them off, which I guess was supposed to be like a real conversation piece. And it seemed to be, by the way, when I was looking at those audience reactions that were so enthusiastic. They're like, I can't believe they did that. They went so hard. But what I read that as, I was really annoyed because I'm like, okay, so what did this show give us? They give us this boy getting killed at the beginning. We get introduced to all these characters, and all of that is just to have a rug pull in the final moment. And then we also get introduced to the not Halloran. What's the other character? Hanlon. So the Hanlon family. Leroy Hanlon is this Black Army, or actually, I guess he's an Air Force pilot who's come to this town, and there's the issues of racism and everything that you would expect from the 1962. But there is a section in it where his family is rescued from a fire that is set at a bar that serves mostly Black families, and he's saved by Dick Halloran, the Dick Halloran from The Shining. So Dick Halloran, So Dick Halloran's driving the car in that scene. So I guess they're trying to integrate now this little tidbit from the It novel that Dick Halloran is not going to be a main character, will eventually, I presume, rescue this family. And maybe that story is not actually true and we see some alternate version of it, but that's what we have set up. But the point is, other than the setup of what's happening at the military base, and I'm not really sure I want the military involved with killing this version of It, when it's such a different type of story they would be telling if it goes very sci-fi versus what we saw in the traditional adaptations of It. And then like all the time spent with hanging out with the kids, only to have them all killed off in that final scene. And not killed off by Pennywise, by the way, killed off by the weird zombie baby, which I thought was just like for that first scene. But no, this is like is this the demon for the rest of the season? I don't know. Tev, as you can tell, I wasn't enjoying much of this.
If only they could have Scatman Crothers play Halloran.
DH him a lot.
I'm not sure. Is he still alive?
I think he passed a few years back, actually. Yeah.
I think so too. Okay, so that's interesting that you have a bit more perspective on the novel, which I've tried to read over the years, mostly when I was too young, but couldn't get through because it's as thick as a phone book.
1,000 pages.
Yeah. A couple of things that I enjoyed. I liked the way they integrated the Music Man film into the story. And I think one of the most successful scenes from the It films was when the film came alive, I think, in the first chapter of the remake. And I thought that was quite frightening. So I thought that was interesting that they were doing a similar thing in the theatre with the boy. That is he dead, or is he just been taken by Pennywise? And also the lampshade. That was probably the most frightening thing in the episode, I think, that the lampshade made from the skin of a Holocaust prisoners was frightening, terrifying. Yeah, so where do we go with this? It's very interesting. You're so negative about it. Also, the story with the whole nuclear paranoia also ties into A House of Dynamite, which was the most recent thing I watched just before I watched this. Yeah, which I thought was interesting. So, yeah. What do you think of the performances of the kids?
I mean, I had the same problems you did. I think the kids in general weren't vibing for me, and it makes sense because it looks like most of these kids, I mean, maybe they'll be like come back as ghost figures because that's actually possible as well. So maybe we'll see some of these kids in other forms. But yeah, to be honest, in the reviews I've been reading, and they're very mixed as well, even from the critics, some are very negative, but they call out the fact that, well, then most of the loser club, this version of it, is gone by the end of the episode. And thank goodness that we have this one really strong central character who's left behind. And I have to say, maybe she will improve as the show goes on, but I was invested in her character, and I don't think she gave a very good performance. But more importantly, I didn't think anybody on the show was really giving a good performance. And I don't want to even disparage the performers because I don't think they have any characters to play. Like, and maybe it's too early to know what story are they trying to tell, but I just don't have any table setting here of what story are they even going to tell. So these characters don't really have any characteristics, any character traits yet. So maybe I shouldn't judge too early. But in this particular episode, I didn't think anybody really stood out for me.
Yeah, I did like the lead character. She had a friend at high school with glasses.
I did like her friend.
Hair. Yes,
I agree.
Yeah. Yes. She was the highlight for me.
She was a real person. I agree. I did enjoy her. Yes.
I did read that this is written by the writer of Argyle, which I haven't seen, but which
Oh
I've heard
no.
universally
Oh my
terrible things about.
God. Oh my God. If that's true, then no wonder. Argyle is one of the worst things I've seen. So these two might be in competition. Who knows? But that's it. I mean, and there's not any other plot to cover. I mean, that's the other reason I think that we could probably just keep covering this and see how our feelings change or don't over the course of this watch, because there's really not anything to dissect here other than I'm sure there's definitely some obvious themes that are being explored here, especially the racism on the military base. And I'm sure there's going to be some kind of grand conspiracy that somehow relates to this supernatural demon and how it's been like under this town this whole entire time. But I don't know how to I don't know what else to say. I don't have anything else. Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mind not seeing Pennywise in his clown guise. I'm assuming the demon is Pennywise, but who knows? But I did say Bill Skarsgård is back playing this character, but I don't know when he's going to pop up and do his little smile, which everybody's looking forward to. But I also didn't miss it in this episode, which was good. So they're teasing us a little in that way.
Another thing, maybe my expectations were a little disappointed here too, that I had heard, and I read the interview today in detail, I avoided it earlier, but I had heard through the grapevine that the Machetes were talking about the story taking place in multiple timelines. And maybe I had like a more convoluted imagination of what this might be, where you could actually see like characters in one timeline and how that helps defeat Pennywise in another timeline, or that Pennywise exists in multiple timelines because he's like in a supernatural being. So I thought there'd be some interesting way where you can see how things have changed and have not changed in this town over time. And so many of Stephen King's novels, whether it is Salem's Lot or Needful Things, and of course it as well, are all about like a town that like refuses to change, and how there's like these sins in its past that are covered up, and then how the demon or monsters that show up represent that to some extent. So this is a theme that he goes back to over and over again. And it'll be interesting to explore that by having these parallel storylines. And that's what I was expecting when I heard about these multiple timelines. But that's not it, Darren. I read the interview, and what he was saying is he pitched this to HBO as 3 seasons. There'll be 1 season in 1962. The next season will be in 1935. And then the final season will be in 1908, when Pennywise, the actual clown, where he originates. So I'm like, I don't know if that's an interesting way to tell this story. But I guess that's if this thing even comes back for another season. So that's another big question mark.
Well, it's a good tip. I mean, I'd probably be more interested in seeing the 1908 version, the very early version.
They worked right forward instead of backwards, right?
Yeah, but oh well. So the next one's dropping on Halloween. So
Halloween, yes. Thank you for reminding me. That's the big news for anybody who is vested in this. I assume if you're still listening to this, you do care. You'll get it early. So it's available on Halloween for anybody who wants to stream it early. And then we will regroup and discuss episode 2 and also whatever else comes up. What do I have on the agenda? Oh, Begonia. So I'll be reviewing Begonia. I don't know if you'll get a chance to watch it, Darren, but if not, let me know. But maybe a little bit of homework for people out there. But my general opinion is you should always watch the remake before the original, because the original one might mess things up. There is a South Korean film called Save the Green Planet, and it's easy to stream. It's available on Hoopla and Canopy and a bunch of other free streamers. And this Begonia, the new Yorgos Lanthimos film, is a remake of that South Korean film. So if you want to watch that, you can watch that in anticipation. But we will be covering the next episode of this Welcome to Derry series and whatever else pops up along the way. Oh, and before then, by the way, I want to shout out that this Wednesday, I'll be wrapping up this season of Slow Horses and also another Mick Herron adaptation, Down Cemetery Way, I think it's called. So just as Apple TV wraps up one very successful spy thriller based on the Mick Herron novels, we get a new one starring Emma Thompson, by the way.
Cool. I haven't seen any of Slow Horses, so I'll probably miss that episode, but I'm going to catch up on it one day because it gets universally great response. And so, yeah, I'm interested to see if the next season is as good as previous.
It's a workplace comedy and also a spy thriller, and highly recommended. And it's always 6 episodes, by the way. And they are already shooting the next season. They crank them out one a year. So I love just the idea of just regularly cranking out these seasons indefinitely. And but do check out, Darren, check out on Wednesday, check out the new thriller series that they have with Emma Thompson, that Down Cemetery Way, I think it's called. Let me look it up so I get it right.
Okay, so Slow Horses is on Apple. Is this one on Apple as well?
They are. They're both on Apple, and Down Cemetery Road is what it's called. And but this is it's not in the universe of Slow Horses, but it is a separate spy thriller. So hey, you can start fresh, and you could always backfill your watching of Slow Horses over time as well.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea.
But The Dead Zone, what'd you think of it?
It was great. It was very 80s.
Yeah.
The music was very over the top. It was very what you think of 80s movies, very plodding and yeah, the acting was of that time. But it was great to see Christopher Walken as the protagonist. I thought his girlfriend in the show did a really good job. Martin Sheen was great to see him in that role. He was perfect for that role.
Speaking of nuclear bombs also.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, it was fun. It was a fun thing. And it was, I think, one of the better Stephen King adaptations without being fantastic. It was very solid. And yeah, it was a fun watch.
Yeah. And yeah, Cronenberg, one of his most mainstream films. And then he made The Fly after that.
I love The Fly, but I kept expecting it to go harder or go, a bit more Cronenberg-y, but it didn't. It was quite straight and yeah, it was fine.
Yeah, I think that the only thing where Cronenberg or is fascinated by body horror, but like the body itself as a betrayal. But I think the only scene in that whole entire film that has like his fingerprints on it is when the serial killer kills himself with the scissors.
Yes.
And that spasm afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah, you just brought that back.
But yeah, it's one of my favorite Stephen King adaptations. And Cronenberg, like I said, like a really mainstream version of a Cronenberg film, but still. And Howard Shore, that soundtrack, he's done all of Cronenberg's films and started, I think that's maybe the first one he did with him, actually.
It was very notable, yeah, for sure. And it's just amazing. You just think about if you were in a coma for 5 years and you had a girlfriend, you had a job, and you wake up and everything's gone. Yeah, it's quite an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah. And he gives a great performance, of course. Cronenberg has always really got great performances, from whether you think about Dead Ringers or you think about Jeff Goldblum in The Fly and Gina Davis, both of them fantastic. And you have this film as well. I mean, he always gets really great performances from his actors.
I'm still looking forward to seeing The Shrouds, which was his last film, but I really enjoy Eastern Promises with Viggo Mortensen.
So good.
That's
another great
one
performance.
Of his great modern ones, yeah.
Naomi Watts is great in that movie too. I mean, just great performances all around. And The History of Violence, of course, yeah. Oh, and I saw The Shrouds, by the way, and I very much liked The Shrouds. It's a movie that I liked very much. I would recommend to nobody. It's like if you are a big fan of Cronenberg, it is one of his most personal films. So it's very autobiographical. It's about the death of his wife. So there is this element to it that is so personal, but what a bizarre film. And not a mainstream film by any stretch of the imagination. But I think Cronenberg is so far even giving a crap as to whether his films are mainstream or not. So good for him as well. Make them if you can. Whatever, he's in his 80s at this point. So make a couple more of those.
Incredible.
Okay, so a couple more things I wanted to touch on. First of all, I went to the Montclair Film Festival this week. And there's a whole bunch of films I wanted to see. And only got to see 2 of the ones I really wanted to see. One is the new Joachim Trier film, Sentimental Value. This is from the director of The Worst Person in the World, one of my favorite films of the past few years, and stars also Renata Rensvi, same actress who starred in that film, and Stellan Skarsgård, and also Elle Fanning is in this film as well. And it's coming out in the US this week. So just want to shout it out that it won the Cannes Award, and it is getting rave reviews. I thought this film was excellent, but too long. And I watched it with my wife. We both agreed that we thought the pacing was bad, but it is very strong, incredible performances, an amazing emotional wallop at one point in the film But like, it's one of those films that like every scene could be a little shorter. You could just make like, it's not like they want to cut out big chunks of the film. They just made all the scenes shorter. But the pacing was a problem. But other than that, the film is really strong, which of course I did not feel for most of his other films. The other film I saw that you'll be curious about, Darren, I think, is the new Park Chan-wook film, No Other Choice, which is an adaptation of a Donald Westfield novel from the 1980s, believe it or not, and set in America. This one is set in South Korea, and it's about this guy who is like upper middle class, and he works at a paper company, and he gets downsized. He loses his job. An American company comes, downsizes acquires it, and then downsizes his company. And then he decides that he needs to get that job back. So at one point, he's fantasizing about possibly killing the guy who's his boss. But then he starts thinking, wait a second, actually, what I should do is interview everybody who could be a possible candidate for this job by putting an ad out, and then looking at everybody who applies for the job, and then seeing the ones who are better than me, and I'll kill all those people. And then they'll have to hire me back. And it's really fascinating. And as it's very comedic early on, and as he is basically stalking these people and contemplating, is he going to actually go through with this or not? As he eavesdrops on these people's conversations and follows them around, he starts to see that all they have all the same parallel problems he has. So he gets more empathy towards them, but still is set on this plan. I won't spoil anything as to whether he goes through with this plan or not. But the film is very comedic, really suspenseful at times as well, not slow paced at all. And what I would say is the end of the film is one of those things that's pretty mundane. I don't want to spoil anything here, but felt downright apocalyptic in watching it. And it was like just one of those things that these South Korean films can do, where you're laughing out loud at big chunks of the movie. And then by the time you get to the end, you have this like existential dread that the world is doomed. And that's basically where we are with this film. And this was the movie, by the way, I told you, Darren, the last time I recorded, that this had like made it like, I think this is my number 2 for the year. It was really strong film. So that is not coming out till Christmas here or over there, but put a pin in it, everybody. It's still playing more film festivals. As a matter of fact, Darren, I think it's playing a film festival. What is it? I don't know if it's near you or not. Just next week, actually, in Australia. I'm looking at it right now. No, I can't find it. Anyway, but it might be playing at a film festival somewhere near you. But
well, I'm a massive fan of Korean cinema, and you've given me some great recommendations. Remind me, Park Chan-wook, did he do Old
Boy and
Old Boy? Yeah,
and the Decision to Leave. And for me, I mean, I'm a fan of many of his films, but I think he's made Old Boy, The Handmaiden, and Decision to Leave are all masterpieces. And I'd say Joint Security Area and Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance are near masterpieces. Like he's got 4 or 5 movies that are near masterpieces. And by the way, No Other Choice is in that, not a masterpiece, but a near masterpiece. His batting average is incredible for me. And so and like I said, I mean, his worst films, like he has an English language film, which is still very interesting, not fully successful, but it's called Stoker. Have you ever seen Stoker?
I haven't, no.
This is a psychological horror movie that you might be interested in seeing. It has Mia Wasikowska and Nicole Kidman, Matthew Good, Dermot Mulrooney, Jackie Weaver. It's got a great cast, and it's very strange, like a Oedipal psychosexual thriller. And I do recommend it. It is one of his worst films, but by the way, not a full success, not fully successful. And I think the language barrier is part of the problem because it's in English, obviously. But it is still really fascinating, like a movie that doesn't work, but is really interesting. So even his worst films, I think, are, and like I said, he's got 5 stone cold classics. So this is another one. This No Other Choice, another great film.
And what is it with these Korean movies that just absolutely shatter you by the end and get you recalibrating your worldview because of some of the themes they present? I mean, some are really tough going, but so entertaining.
People are saying it's this year's Parasite. It definitely has to do with some of the same social issues. But I mean, that's not the tone management thing. I know how difficult it is it's just something, I think it's just some directors got it. And some directors don't got it, but it's like the Coen brothers can do this. David Lynch can do this, make you laugh in one scene and then terrify you the next. And Park Chan-wook can do this, and some of these, and it's almost a style in a lot of these South American, South Korean films. But it's a hard thing to pull off. But when it's impressive when you can. All right, Darren. So another thing I was thinking is, as we are going through watching the Derry series, and if we presume, and maybe let's just presume this, that from week to week, there might not be that much plot to cover. Because this happened, that happened, this worked for me, that didn't work for me. 5-minute recap. If that seems to be the case week to week as we're covering this, I was wondering if we did want to do a rewatch of something, put something in the back burner that we either want to rewatch or haven't watched before. And I came up with a list of things. So you can mull this over and decide which one of these appeals to you given the next before we meet up again. Okay, option number 1, also on HBO Max, The Outsider, a Stephen King adaptation for a recent novel, not an old novel of his, but a very recent one of his better recent novels. And you have not seen this. I have seen this. It's good. You have not seen it. So that's option number 1. Option number 2, because of Tron Ares, I have been listening to the soundtrack to Watchmen again. And listening to the soundtrack to Watchmen made me want to watch The Watchmen again. Who watches The Watchmen? So I needed to watch The Watchmen again and hear that great soundtrack. But also, hey, another adaptation like it, Welcome to Derry, but it's not a straight adaptation, like a sidequel, like a pseudo sequel to the original work, not actually the original work. So I'm like, hey, there's an extrapolation on, and also on HBO Max, so easy enough to watch. So that's option number 2. Option number 3 is there's 3 seasons of this show, but we would watch just season 1 of Castle Rock, another attempt to take Stephen King stories and make something else out of them. I have not watched this at all. I know you've sampled it, right?
I've sampled The Outsider, but I have never seen, I don't think I've seen anything of Castle Rock.
Oh, okay. All right. So that's an option. There you have, like, that is set in Castle Rock and basically a stew of all these different storylines from Stephen King. And that is on Hulu. I don't know if you have Hulu, but if you do, or Disney, I guess you have it on Disney. So that's another option. Oh, do you have Paramount Plus?
I got rid of it, but I can pick it back up again if there's something that's necessary to view.
I wouldn't recommend it for this particular thing. I have not seen this, but there's a new adaptation that no one has seen, by the way, because this is when Paramount Plus first came along. One of the very first things they produced before the network actually had any kind of viewership was a miniseries of The Stand. And this is with Alexander Skarsgård and a bunch of famous people in it. And what's his name from Paradise we just talked about? Who plays the president in Paradise?
Oh, James Marsden.
James Marsden, right? So James Marsden, an all-star cast basically in this series that no one has watched. I think it's only like 6 episodes long, and it's on Paramount Plus. So that's another possible option. It's just a one and done season, so easy enough. I'll leave it at that. That's enough. That's enough choices, I think, at that point. So yeah. So once again, it could be The Outsider, or Watchmen, or Castle Rock, or The Stand. Those are mostly Stephen King adaptations, of course, but we also have The Watchmen, which I just want to rewatch. So it would be easy enough. And I make the excuse, hey, look, it's an adaptation of it's an adaptation of like one sentence in the original work in both cases, right? And it has that in common. But also maybe something that I think is someone extrapolating on the original material in a successful way versus maybe not successful way, but we can compare and contrast. So
yeah, well, The Watchmen really jumped out at me. I have seen it before, and it blew my mind, to be honest, how crazy it was, how different it was from the source material, and how it just took on its own story, and how successful it was at it. I thought it was fascinating. So I could possibly be up for a rewatch of that. Otherwise, I have bad memories of the Stand miniseries from the 90s. I remember getting super invested in it and actually hating it. So I'm not sure if that bodes well for another remake of that. And Castle Rock also seems very interesting in the way that it is adapting stories from, I guess, the town of Derry, right?
It's actually Castle Rock. So, but I mean, they all take place in Maine. So I think like Derry and Castle Rock are supposedly in these fictional world. They're like neighbors of each other.
And I wonder if it's, yeah, how successful it is compared to It Welcome to Derry and telling these stories.
Yep. So I thought they would all be intriguing things to dip into. We probably won't be able to discover all of them. So if we pick one, we can reach out to me during the week. And by the way, audience, if you want to pipe up, if you have a particular one that you've been wanting to watch, reach out to us. Needssomeintroduction@gmail.com is the easiest way to email us or get in touch with us. But also, if you want to leave a comment on, if you're listening to us on Spotify, just put a comment on this episode and I will receive it. Or on YouTube, of course. On YouTube, just put a comment and I will aggregate that. And if we get a lot of feedback for one over the other, then I will take the decision away from Darren and we will go with what the audience wants. Otherwise, it's up to Darren because I would watch or rewatch any of these. And I honestly lean towards Watchmen as well. But if you've never seen The Outsider, it's actually good. So it's something you can watch. It's an opportunity to catch up on that for yourself as well.
Yeah, I did notice it wanted to play, my HBO Max wanted to play The Outsider straight away after I watched Welcome to Derry.
It's been wanting me to play it, chapter 1. That's what they want.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Darren. So this is the section of the episode where we can talk about horror recommendations for fraidy cats. I'm pulling up my list I sent you.
Right, I did have a look at your list. I haven't created a list of my own as of yet, but as I was looking at your list, some of the films you had there were some of the most terrifying films I've ever seen. So, so we'll see how it shakes out.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point, though. So I did have categories for these. So the first one, and I'm actually curious to also know if you've watched these films. So my first section is psychological. So if you are somebody who likes psychological, this is my preference, by the way. I like psychological thrillers, psychological dramas, even if there's nothing horror related in it. I prefer my horror films to have some kind of psychological aspect as well. Gore, slashers. I mean, I can enjoy a slasher film for like fun kills and things like that, but it's not scary to me in any way. But psychological thrillers and dramas do get under my skin. So I have a list of these. So if gore is your problem, that's specifically what I'm bringing up. So if gore is your problem, you don't like jump scares, but you do like psychological thrillers. Of course, in general, you can watch like David Fincher movies. You can watch all of them. You can watch David Lynch films, all of them, right? So I mean, like those are like granted, but these are some that maybe you haven't caught up with. One is The Babadook. So that is an Australian breakout, very small budget, but a true breakout film. We've been talking about that movie multiple times because of Essie Davis, right? Has popped up in a bunch of things we watched this year.
Truly terrifying film. I think I watched it during the day and I was extremely freaked out. Yeah, it's like a monster film on a budget and very effective at scaring the audience, I think.
And then a hugely popular film here that maybe people have forgotten about, but I think it's still worth a rewatch if you've never caught up with it, of course, is Black Swan.
Yes, I reckon I've only seen it once. I really want to watch that again.
I saw that twice in theaters. I remember seeing it when it was in limited. This is one of those movies that came out only in limited release and then became a massive blockbuster. It's so funny. They did not think this movie was going to be a commercial hit. So they put it in limited screens and then it played through the holidays and they couldn't get it on a lot of screens because there's so much competition around the holidays. So it was like having huge sellouts. And I remember seeing it and I'm like, well, it made a lot of money in the United States, but is this really going to play worldwide? Darren, the movie ended up making $128 million in the United States and another 200 and more than $200 million overseas, over like $350 million. I'm like, what the hell? It was people obsessed with Black Swan for some reason, but it is a really impressive film about obsession and loss of identity. And, you know, how committing yourself so much to a particular thing can actually lead to this like loss of self, basically. So it's a really powerful psychological profile.
And it's very female led as well.
Very,
so I think
yes.
my wife really loves this film, but yeah, she's very apprehensive at rewatching it as well. I think one of my daughters really wants to see it and my wife's just said no, not till you're older. So yeah.
I didn't even make this connection that in my psychological section, I have The Babadook, which of course has a female protagonist and is very female centric. Black Swan, of course. And my third one was Saint Maud, which is another profile of two women who get into a psychosexual relationship with each other. Have you ever seen Saint Maud?
I haven't seen this one, but the director popped up on my radar recently because she's done something else.
She did Love Lies Bleeding.
That's right. Yep.
Saint Maud.
Which I haven't seen either.
Oh, you haven't? Okay. Well, I recommend both of those movies, by the way. They're very different. But Love Lies Bleeding is not a horror film, although it gets categorized as a horror film. It's a neo-noir, but it has some shocking, utterly shocking violence in it. But just flashes of it, but incredibly violent and graphic. So, that take that with a grain of salt. If you're averse to gore, not necessarily. It's not a film about gore, but if you're averse to gore, it's not going to work for you, I don't think. But it is very good. Saint Maud is not a gory film at all. It's about this girl who starts working for this very rich woman. She is a former nurse. She had something tragic happen to one of her patients. She also used to be or trained to be a nun, and then religion and her obsession to save this woman who's sick and her trauma from what happened in the hospital is all conflating. So she starts to have visions, like have religious visions, and she thinks that she's being called upon. And it is a really powerful psychological profile. It's not really a horror film. This movie has a really memorable final shot, is what I'll say as well.
Cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
This movie is like, no one's seen this movie. I've recommended it on this podcast multiple times. It is so under the radar, and it's such a good film. And I think it's pretty easy to find streaming. It's definitely on Amazon Prime and probably in a bunch of other places too. All right, killers. If you like killers, but you like Silence of the Lambs, you don't like Jason Voorhees, you like Silence of the Lambs. Okay, Zodiac, of course. Like I said, all Fincher films are probably pretty much on this list if you want to. Speaking of Fincher, Mindhunter, if the canceled Netflix series, which is so great. And now they're saying we will actually get a couple of movies that will catch up with these characters later on, but it is based on true life, the behavioral science unit of the FBI and the foundation of it. They live underground at the FBI building, and they're interviewing serial killers, trying to develop profiling to be able to understand how they kill and be able to use that to catch these killers, and profiling actual real world serial killers. But it's not the version of like Monsters version of wallowing in people being tormented and torn apart. It is literally just people, the science of it. But it is terrifying sometimes, like when they think they're close to capturing someone, in the same way that Zodiac is sometimes so psychologically tense, even though it's not graphically violent most of the time. It functions the same way. And also, by the way, a lot of the show actually shot by David Fincher.
Yeah, fascinating show. I've seen most of it. Very cerebral, very procedural. I've actually read the book that it's based on, written by the guy who basically developed this way of identifying serial killers by their behavior. And it's just a fascinating read. And looking forward to movies they're going to make out of it.
And if you like Silence of the Lambs, of course, the first Hannibal Lecter film is not Silence of the Lambs. It's actually Manhunter. And this is very 80s, but still holds up. I just saw it last year again. Have you ever seen Manhunter?
Yeah, I have. I've seen it a couple of times. It's Michael Mann, isn't it?
Michael Mann, exactly. One of his first movies. And if you've watched Mindhunter, you do know that in the background, this is something that was supposed to resolve in the next season of Mindhunter, which never happened. But throughout the previous seasons of the show, you see a killer who's developing a modus operandi. It is the BTK killer, who is like waiting in people's homes and tortures these women and usually kills them, not always, but obviously this is upsetting content. But you never actually see him make any of his kills. You just see him developing his skills, basically. And that BTK killer there is a film that is, once again, very easy to watch, called The Clove Hitch Killer, which is not about the BTK killer, but almost all the details in that film are based on the BTK killer. And this is about when he's basically at the end of his run of murders. In the real world situation, it was like he was discovered by his family to be the BTK killer. And it's fictionalized. There was a daughter in the real world story. It's a boy here. And there's more like this idea of like this father being disappointed with his son for not presenting the right kind of masculine traits he expects. So there's a lot of this kind of examination of masculinity. in that relationship that they get to play up because we're looking at a boy instead of a girl like it was in the real true life story. But it's pretty upsetting stuff, especially when you think that a lot of the details that are in the film are actually based on the true crimes. But it is a pretty strong serial killer film, and it's very recent. So there was a big spate of them back in the 90s. If you want that kind of more cerebral, more procedural serial killer film that is very much like set within the drama of the family. It's not really about like a Silence of the Lambs type Dracula, like Hannibal Lecter character, but a very mundane serial killer story, but intriguing, very interesting, and probably more psychologically true than you expect some of these other series. Then it's just the movie, it's not a series, but it's a pretty interesting watch. I don't know if you were caught up with that one, Darren.
No, but that sounds interesting. I don't know much about the BTK killer. I think there's a true crime documentary that's quite big on Netflix at the moment.
One, yes, that's another reason I
Yeah.
actually thought of this, because I knew it's popped up again because of that. Before we
just
move on-
back to Manhunter,
Go ahead.
There's a good trivia question. Who's the first actor to play
Right.
Hannibal Lecter? And it's Brian Cox in Manhunter.
That's right. Oh, before I move to the next category, so any recommendations you had off the top of your head for those categories? So first psychological and then killers.
Mate, you've got a long list. Let's keep going with your list.
You
Waiting for me to think
You
about
could jump in at the end. Okay, sure. Okay, if you like science fiction with a little twinge of horror in there, these are none of the films I'm about to call out are horror films. So I want to be clear about that. If you like sci-fi, you don't like horror, then these three films are not horror films, but it has horror iconography. When you're watching it multiple times, you'll start feeling like this feels more like a horror movie, even though we're actually in the realm of sci-fi. And it's got to do with like alternate histories, alternate realities, time loops. And I won't even tell you which is which in which of these stories, because part of the pleasure of these films is the surprise in seeing how the stories unwind. And I really like all three of the films I'm about to shout out. Okay, first one is Coherence. And now I need to pull up some information about this film. This movie's from like 2013. And I mean, the actors in it, all recognizable TV actors, basically. I think they wrote this and produced it like at one of their homes just because they needed something to do. These are people that you've probably seen on TV, like one of the cast members of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for example, that probably weren't getting a lot of work at the time. And they almost improvised the script around this concept. And it is such an interesting film to watch. And basically the premise of it is that there is a meteor passing overhead, and in the middle of the night, these friends who are all together at this dinner party wander outside, and in wandering outside, they get lost. Some of them get lost, and they walk in and finally find their ways back into the house. But something has happened, and they have somehow walked into like an alternate reality version of the house. And then the people, of course, who were out and about, their alternate versions have now ended up in the other home. And then they have this revelation that this understanding that this has happened, and they have to figure out, like, how do we know which reality we're in right now? And they're literally just like writing notes on a piece of paper and they come up with very clever ways to untangle this. But then they start getting paranoid about each other as well. Like, what could be the agenda here as this night progresses? And it's like very low key and very quiet, but very smart. And like I said, it has moments where it kind of slips into a world of horror, possibly. But have you ever seen this film?
I'm looking it up, and I don't think I've ever heard of this film, but it looks like the type of movie that I'd really enjoy.
Next one, very much in the same vein, is a film called Triangle. You ever seen this one, Darren?
Doesn't ring a bell either.
I think this one's a little more popular.
Okay, no? Oh, I'm getting a long list.
You got a lot to catch it up to do. This movie's from 2009, stars Melissa George, Australian, correct?
Yep. Yeah, she grew up just down the street from me.
Oh, there you go. But directed by Christopher Smith, who's from the UK, who's made some other films that I'm trying to think of what's popular, that he's the most popular thing he's done. He did like a horror comedy called Severance. I don't know if you ever saw that one. Black Death. Severance is the one where these people go on a work retreat and there's a serial killer chasing them down. It's like another comedy horror film. Triangle is not comedic, very importantly here. So Melissa George goes out on this yacht, and she is on this boat, and then she sees a masked person with a gun, and something happens on the boat, which I won't go into details. And what happens is that she gets rescued by another boat. But then things start to repeat. And then she starts to realize that she's inside of the same events she saw before, and it starts to nest. It's like the film Primer in a way, where you start to see like how many iterations is she into this story, and then you start to think like, when did this all start? And it's really mind bending, and has like, there's moments in the film when you realize what's actually happening, and is one of those. It's all done visually. No one says a word because so much of this is just her reacting to what's happening, and it's like such a shocking moment. You're like, oh my God, I cannot believe what I'm seeing right now. It's an incredible reveal. And I'm like, I'm obviously being as vague as possible, but if you like those kind of things where you're like, what the hell is going on? And then like someone just turns around and sees something and you're like, oh my God, I know what's happening right now. And you like that kind of revelation. That's what the film gives you.
I'm definitely going to be busy because I haven't heard of this one either.
Oh, of course. Last one, and you might have the same problem with this. Have you ever seen the Spanish film called Time Crimes?
Again, I have not seen it, but I think I have heard of this one.
This one I feel like a lot of people have heard of. And this is maybe the best of the three that I just mentioned. This one's from 2007. As a matter of fact, this is the earliest of those three. I think this one probably inspired the other two. And this is, I mean, some of the iconography in Triangle is right out of Time Crimes. And it's a very similar situation where this man gets into a car accident. He shows up back at his house. There's a stranger there. He gets attacked. And then same thing as I just described in Time Crimes and also in Coherence, that at some point he starts to be like, what is actually going on? And then it's as if he's like, I have somehow entered into an alternate timeline, and he is trying to figure out, how do I get back into my regular timeline? Like, and the actions he needs to take get more and more extreme. So gets really extreme, but very funny at the same time. And once again, the way that he solves everything at the end is just brilliant, utterly brilliant. And this is available on Hulu, by the way. I'm just pulling it up right now. So very easy to watch. Check it out on Hulu. It's in Spanish, but hey, come on. And by the way, it's in Spanish, but so much of this is him reacting to things. There's barely any dialogue in it anyway. So I don't know how many more of these I can do. I'll just go one more category here because I put maybe too many things on my list, and I still want to get some feedback from you as well. But so vampires. So if you like not necessarily vampire movies and you don't like horror films, I have two vampire films that I highly recommend. One is Only Lovers Left Alive, which is Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton as these vampires that are hundreds of years old, living in Detroit, and basically just hipsters, like the oldest hipsters in the world. And this is Jim Jarmusch, so it's very much of a hang of a movie, but it is definitely a horror. I mean, not a horror film. It's not scary, but it is definitely a vampire film, let's say it that way. And it's also like wildly romantic, but like so many Jim Jarmusch movies, like me being a hipster who's about the same age as Jim Jarmusch, maybe he's probably a generation older than me, but we're not that far apart in age. And when all these revelations of like how like the experience of aging and trying to be a hipster still at the same time, I shake my head a lot listening and watching Jim Jarmusch films, and maybe no more than this one, which of course is also a vampire film, which I also enjoy, anything horror related. So I did like the way he brought horror elements to his usual type of observational comedy. And another great comedy that I just saw very recently, this is a Montreal film. This is also available, I think, definitely on Canopy, but on a lot of the other streamers as well. This is a movie called Humanist Vampire Seeks Consenting Suicidal Person. And this is about a teenage vampire girl who refuses to kill, but and her parents are just so frustrated. They're like, she needs to move out of the house. She can't be a kid forever. And we can't keep killing for her. She needs to grow up, get out of the house, and finally learn how to kill on her own. And the way she decides to solve this is by trying to find suicidal young men that she can feed off of. But the first one that she attempts this on very much wants her to kill him, but she gets a crush on him. So it becomes this coming of age vampire comedy. And it's very sweet and it is very funny. The family stuff is very funny. Like when you had the parents are so frustrated with her. I think a lot of people have these kind of scenes that you see in movies of these parents disappointed with their younger generation. But of course, they're trying to murder innocent people while they're doing this. So it's very funny and very relatable in its own way. And this is, I think a lot of people have not seen this one, so I do recommend it. It is in French. It's a French Canadian, but it is a very good film as well.
Great. Okay. Well, you filled out my list very well. I've got a couple that I've just pulled up now talking about the vampire genre. There's Let the Right One In, and also the remake, the American remake, Let Me In. And I think they're both really good.
I agree.
And both different as well. So we went to Sci-Fi. So I think Sci-Fi, I'm not sure if Annihilation.
Oh, yeah.
Which I found very scary. Maybe not a horror movie, but definitely has horror elements. And I thought it was quite original. And that's by Alex Garland, who I think is, a bit of a master and is becoming, an extremely important writer and director these days. And one other one, which I think you recommended to me a while ago, which is 10 Cloverfield Lane, which is look, I don't know if these are for scaredy cats, but they're movies that I've seen recently, which, qualify as horror, but also Cloverfield Lane, a little bit sci-fi as well. Yeah,
for sure.
And that's by the director of the new Predator, Badlands.
Yes, I can't wait to see that as well. That's another thing that we can discuss when we're covering the Derry show.
Yeah, pumped for that.
Okay, I know we're coming up on your deadline, but I forgot one more thing we need to cover here just quickly, because I don't think it's going to take that long. The spoiler section here at the end. Everybody obviously drop out if you have not seen the House of Dynamite, but spoiler section here for House of Dynamite. If you have no interest in seeing it, so you can stick around, but obviously I have to say that I did have that reaction of watching the film and being very into it. And literally, as it ended, in my mind, I was like writing my Letterboxd review. And the second it ended, I'm like, -1 star. Because I honestly felt like it was not even like, oh, what an intriguing place to leave the story on. Like, I don't even think it's a non-ending. It's no ending. And I think that is a miscalculation. I thought, like, what if that is an ending, let's say, and I don't know if you would make the argument anyway, but what is that as an ending? I just felt like it just stops.
Yeah. When the penny finally dropped and I went, okay, it's never going to hit. What do I think of that? You have to rejig your whole brain to think of what the movie was about now.
Right.
So I was a little bit disappointed for sure, but I still think it was extremely thought-provoking.
Yep.
And I mean, a lot of people in the film were like, it may not be nuclear.
Right.
It may not even work. Like an owl shooting a bullet with a bullet, that didn't work.
Right.
So this might not even go off. It might not be as catastrophic as everybody thinks it is. And all these open-ended questions, that's what it leaves you with, which, while being slightly disappointed, I still thought it was an interesting way to end it. But I did want the bomb to hit. I wanted to see what would happen.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are ways, honestly, for me, and this is why I think people get frustrated, I think any ending would have been better. Like that something happens, we see a mushroom cloud. I understand she didn't want to do that. I understand that. But like it was a glitch in the system. Computer got hacked. And then they're saying like, well, did it detonate or not? Like, can they trust their own systems? That in and of itself would be interesting, right? Or they do make a decision to shoot something off, or they make a decision to not do it. They're like, and you can leave the tension there to be like, we're hoping that we're not going to take action instead of bombing the wrong place. And maybe that's the wrong decision, but now we just have to wait and see. And even that kind of like that tension would be interesting, because the way the film is structured, to replay these 18 minutes over and over again, it's as if at the end of these 18 minutes, something will happen, right? Structurally, I think that if this had been like, to be honest, if this had been like 1 hour of this whole thing playing out, and then we get to the end, I'd be like, I'm okay with that. But for them to replay this is like, this is so important. Let's replay it 3 times. And then we get to the final moment and cut the black. I'm like, what? Cut the black? What are you talking about? Why did you direct me here and then cut the black? Like, I don't understand the point of that at all. And I think
edging and edging and edging. It's no climax.
Edging, just edging. That's right. Exactly. Speaking of over the close action, but and that's exactly correct. But the other thing that's crazy about it is it's that I think that the intention was the joke I made in the initial review, where I said, well, thank God that when these type of things happen, then the adults in the room are the people who have their hands on the nuclear bombs, right? Which of course is sarcastic. And I think that is the intention. She's trying to take us to that point. So we're all making that revelation. But I have to say, I had that thought in the middle of the movie. So I don't think that it landed correctly. Like if she's trying to be like, and now these people we just introduced you to, they're the ones that make the right choice at this moment. And then we have to all think like, oh my God, are the right people in power? And I think that's what she wanted to convey. But like I said, I made that revelation 15 minutes into the movie. I think you need more at the end.
Well, that's right. No one's qualified to make that decision, and it falls on one person who most of the country possibly didn't vote for.
Exactly.
And it was also interesting. I mean, they brought in things that I was disappointed about. They brought in scenes with the stealth bomber crew, which I have no idea why. They were just flying around. I thought they were going to save the day at the last moment. And
we cut back to them at the end. That's like
that's right.
It's actually worse. It's actually worse than like ending in the control room. We're back with them again. Why?
I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all.
It's not even like they're in Chicago and are going to get bombed. They're just people like somewhere. They don't even know what's going on. It's like, what are we doing here? It's really weird.
Yeah.
Really weird.
Didn't get that point apart from what a cool job that would be, is to cruise around in that equipment. That's just amazing. And also the FEMA person who got evacuated into the bunker when possibly she was not the best person, and her workmates were like, why does she get to go?
Why did she get to go? Exactly.
And I didn't even realize what effect that had on the story at all, apart from going into this bunker at the end, which led me to believe, let's go straight into that Paradise show, into the bunker.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm glad you circled back to that, because I thought about it too while we were watching it, but totally forgot to bring it up. But absolutely. But it does make you ask those same questions, right? That Paradise did in a much more heightened way, obviously. But yeah, I mean, what a bizarre choice to end the way they did. And I don't think it worked, basically. I think that's what it's supposed to be. Exactly like you said, it's all edging, and then like, and now what? And we're supposed to leave with all these questions of like, what do you think happened? Are they going to make the right choice? And I don't think that works with this type of film, because we spent minutes with these people. I don't know if they're going to make the right choice or not. I'm not vested in whether they make the right choice or not, right? It's not like I'm really concerned about, like we did see the Tracy Letts character. Is it Tracy Letts character who calls his daughter? Someone calls his daughter.
No, that was, another British actor. He was the Secretary of Defense. I can't remember his name, but apparently he lost a wife, and now he's possibly going to lose his daughter, and he just walks off the roof, which I thought was great.
Yeah. So that is, just a really weird way to end it. But up until then, really suspenseful. I mean, I'm not sure I'm on board with, even though I said it was very suspenseful and really well executed until then, the filmmaking is absolutely impeccable, but I don't think the script works. Even the repetition, which I'm not a big fan of anyway, but the repetition of plot over and over again is didn't really add anything to it either. I think as a matter of fact, because you're rewinding and you don't have the experience of being in it like you were that first time, the suspense is lessened each time. And there's nothing compared to that. The suspense in the first sequence, the Rebecca Ferguson sequence, is so intense because, of course, this is going to be this terrifying situation. And then when you know it's going to repeat multiple times, you just start being like, oh, okay. Like, we don't have to know what's actually going to happen until the end. And then you don't get it at the end. So you're like, oh, okay, I think that's a big structural miscalculation.
One thing we didn't talk about is that the Greta Lee's character came into it, and she was immediately put on call with the president. She almost thought it was a joke, but she brought up the idea that it could just be a cyber hacking incident.
Right. Exactly.
And there might not even be a missile, which is one of the reasons why you couldn't shoot the bullet with the bullet, because there was no other bullet, which I think is really interesting that could possibly occur.
It's a little BS, I think, this particular condition. Not that you wouldn't expect to see like an all-out attack from some foreign country, but more this type of one missile, and then the fact that they would, for example, you have a 60% chance with these missile defense systems. And they're like, well, we can't fire too many of them because we don't know how much more are inbound because there's a finite number of these. They don't have that many of them actually. But given it's only the one missile, then you might want to have a show of force to really make sure you knock it out of the air before things escalate. I think that would happen. The other thing is I can imagine just like flying a bunch of jets into the line of the missile strike. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, I'm sure plenty of people would sacrifice themselves or eject from the planes and just put them on a standard course to try to detonate the bomb if they see it. But yeah, I think it's an interesting point that you bring up too, that there's this whole, one of the questions here, is this even real? Are you going to start a war? This is like going back to war games, right? In 1984, but it's the same concern. What happens if you're seeing a nuclear attack and it's just on the screen and it's not actually happening?
Yeah, and I did think it was funny when they said it could just be one drunken Russian submarine captain who's breaking up with his
accidentally
wife.
Fired a missile, right? And you got to start World War III because of it. I also, by the way, I mean, this is maybe what the film wants us to do, is to talk this out. I mean, if you're in that situation, what do you do? The idea that it's like the Tracy Letts way of thinking that we have to strike, we can't look weak. I'm like, if someone fires one missile, not like 25 missiles, fire one missile, this is catastrophic. But I'm not going to fire a missile until I know exactly who shot me. I'm not going to start a domino effect. That might be the intention of whoever set that one off in the first place. So, I mean, like, not sure the decision would have been as difficult as they were making it out to be.
And that general just wanted to strike anyone, somewhere. Whereas the president, Idris Elba, was very reticent to fire a missile to anywhere unless he knows where it came from first, which I think is what most of us would think. But the amount of pressure that he's under from these forces and these guys sitting next to him saying, you must choose one of these things. It's like, well, do I?
Yeah, and I think some of those arguments, I mean, maybe people do think this way. I mean, I think it's actually become clear that a lot of these politicians do think this way. But I did love those arguments of being like, if you don't bomb someone right now, you're going to look weak and the voters are going to be angry. I'm like, if you start a nuclear war that kills hundreds of millions of people, I think your voters are going to be very angry. So weigh your options, my friend. Weigh your options. That argument, can't look weak. Can't look weak. I'm like, I don't know. Count to 9. We saw a movie this weekend and they're like, before you open an email attachment, it's like one of those public service announcements, like count to 9 before you answer the emailer. It's like, what? Count to 9 before you bomb North Korea.
Yeah. Well, I think I saw in the news yesterday that Russia has just successfully trialed a new smart missile that can hover and hide in the trees and all sorts of things. So it's a topical thing at the moment.
And by the way, those new smaller, the strategic nuclear bombs, as they call them, which don't knock out a whole city. But they are like massive explosions. Anyway, we could detonate multiple buildings at the same time and have nuclear fallout, although much smaller amounts of it, obviously. But these strategic nuclear bombs, they are not going to like be floating in the air for an hour and a half to be shot down. They could be, like you said, they could be like on a drone flying overhead. So it's a scary world that obviously that topic's not even broached here, but it is a scary world we live in, even with nuclear weapons.
And the Idris Elba president did bring up, he said he listened to a podcast. And I was wondering whether that was the podcast that you recommended a while ago with the House of Dynamite. Yeah,
that's right. It was me. Paradox. He was listening to our podcast in this fictional world. Oh my God. By the way, I'm glad you brought that up. What a groan-induced. Not only is it the title of the film, it's like he's saying like, we need to make a decision in the next 5 minutes. And he's like, I was listening to this podcast, which by the way, a line that I say too frequently, my wife would claim. I was listening to this podcast today, but I would hope that at that moment, even if it came from a podcast, I would keep that to myself.
Oh, my wife's sick of me saying that. I have to say I read it in a book or something. She's like,
exactly.
Read it.
There was a podcast
from a podcast, wasn't it?
I could smell podcast all over that. All right. So many more recommendations. Anybody who listened to our last episode and had too many recommendations, well, here's another 20 or 30 or whatever we gave you in this episode. Oh, I don't know. Yet one more thing to discuss if you want to. If you want to. All right, Darren. Thanks once again. And yeah, we will see Welcome to Derry. I do hope it's an improvement next time around. And but we have other things to discuss, of course, many other things to discuss. So we will regroup next week and maybe catch up
Always.
on the Chair Company too. Another funny
Yes.
episode this week. So we'll have
Yes.
touch base on both of
And
them.
also a bit more horrifying than
Yes.
than Welcome to Derry.
Yes,
Definitely
scarier than Welcome to Derry. It's true. Absolutely true.
All right. Great talking to you.
All right. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks, Victor.